All right. Good evening and welcome to the 10th startup talk here at HPI, Hasso-Plattner-Institut in Potsdam. It's a great pleasure having you here in the audience and obviously in particular in the virtual audience as well. Hasso-Plattner-Institut is one of the leading institutions if it comes to digital engineering, and we are very happy to not only welcome a lot of people from Hasso-Plattner-Institut today here in Potsdam and in the digital room, but mainly from WHU or WHU, one of the leading business schools in Europe, if not the leading business school. Yeah. So a warm welcome. My name is Frank Pavlicek. I'm director of the HPI School of Entrepreneurship. And well, we do in a very similar way what others are doing at WHU. We try to foster entrepreneurship. We support it. We have a lot of different kind of programs to build products and digital ventures. And we are very happy to collaborate this night together with you guys at WHU. And this all was born, actually, when Maximilian Eckel, hi Max, and myself met at one meeting here in Berlin and said, well, it can't be that a lot of business people at WHU and a lot of tech people here in Potsdam are not thinking about founding startups and creating great ideas together. And I learned that at WHU there is something called business to tech. It's a sort of a club organized by students, invented by students. And I'm very, very happy that we have the originator and founder of this club here tonight as a speaker, Frank Köhler, which I will introduce in a sec. And the organization from our side has been mainly done by our entrepreneur club that was founded here at HPI to basically foster entrepreneurship together with us with the eSchool. So our club president, as I would say, Daniel, will do the Q&A session after Frank has done his startup talk. So we will meet him later on. But first of all, you've seen I've just taken my mask off. Yeah, we asked ourselves whether we can do this as a hybrid format still or whether we do it as a pure digital format. And we decided to have a small amount of people here at HPI with a lot of distance between each other. This is our D space, the design thinking space here, and it gives us heaps of room, fortunately, and we have implemented a very strict hygiene concept. Everyone was tested. Everyone is 2G plus here in this room. All the windows are open, and the distance is here. So masks are worn by everyone. So let's begin. But it's important, that everyone knows that it was important to us to at least give everyone the feeling that there is a little bit left of presence. So, Startup Talks. It's a pleasure to do the 10th Startup Talk, which it is today, together with WHU. We started this format in 2017 already to bring more practical experience from the startup world to our students and founders here at HPI. We have done this 9 times so far, and we kicked it off with Johannes Reck, and we had others, the founder of Flixbus, for example, here, and we are really, really grateful that Frank Köhler today of Enpal and former WHU alumnus gives us the pleasure of listening to his experiences in the field of startups. And for the first time, we are doing this not alone, but together with a partner. And I'm really, really happy because having founded a cleantech startup myself in 2008, before I did what I do now here at HPI, I know how important it is to look at a topic from different perspectives and how valuable it is to have an interdisciplinary team. And the major idea is not only to benefit from each other in creating great formats like tonight, but mainly to give you all an opportunity to start getting in touch and to always know that if, for example, an HPI student is requiring someone for the business part, that there is an organization at WHU where you can address your question to and say, well, we need some business founder, or vice versa, where WHU students can actively address us and seek for a tech co-founder. Yeah, so this hopefully is just the beginning of more and more intense collaboration and partnership. And now I would like to welcome Frank Köhler, our today's or tonight's guest here. Frank is not only a former student of WHU, he has founded a startup himself, and he started a couple of years ago as a CMO of Enpal. Enpal being one of the major platforms for photovoltaic solutions today. Like 5 years ago, one would had to justify to build another platform in the field of photovoltaics because it was still a justification required that you go from an investor's perspective into the field of renewable energy. We just had a brief chat about like 10 years ago, it was like crazy to do something like that because of the first wave of photovoltaics that just crashed. And today, everyone, and this is even stronger after the last election here in Germany, everyone knows that we all have to do something against climate change and that photovoltaics play a dominant role in the question how we will solve this issue. And one of the core tasks is how do we make it possible that everyone has an easy, understandable access to these kinds of technologies. And this is why I'm so happy that Frank is here tonight and that he will tell us a little bit about founding a company in general. Yeah, his experiences as a founder, that's one thing, about how it felt and still feels, yeah, to be part of a company story at Enpal, starting with like 20 employees when he joined the companies, roughly, and now having more than 1,000 employees already. Yeah, what a ride in such a short time, amazing. And well, additionally, I think he has some great advice after all his learnings in general. So please, here at least in the D space, have a warm welcome for Frank, who I will hand over now to. And let's say hello to Frank, who will now guide you through the presentation.
Thanks so much for the warm welcome, Frank. I'm super excited and happy to be here. So I actually got to know HPI 7 years ago when I was in high school, and some students, like probably you are now, came to my school and did this little introduction, and I found it like amazing at first glance, like the concept. Didn't decide for HPI, but business and WHU, but I feel like the similarities in a practical approach are really clear, and I'm super happy to be here on this campus for the first time.
Thank you so much for coming here. I have one organizational thing. Just after your talk, after your presentation, there will obviously be the chance to ask questions. Yeah, save your questions, or if you're in the digital space, write them into the chat. Yeah, we will collect all the questions and then address the questions to Frank. So after your talk, there will be plenty of time to have a discussion, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So, stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Perfect, thanks. So, yeah, warm welcome to everyone here. I'm super happy that we actually do have an audience, because fully digital would be so much harder to get any response from you guys. But also super happy and glad to have the people in the digital space, so we can actually mix it as times are complicated. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions of understanding during the speech. And if you have any questions which are separate or out of curiosity, we can go into them after the speech to have a clear separation. So first of all, I need to figure out how this works. So first of all, yeah, what are we going to talk today about? So today's agenda is to give you a brief background about me and then go into the two main topics, best of Jodel and Enpal, what I learned during those 3 years approximately each. And then I wrote together 12 learnings for young founders during university in general. To start this off, I wanted to ask, what are your expectations for the next 54, 45, or 90 minutes? What do you want to get to know? What is your expectation of this presentation? Any volunteers? What do you want to hear? Is there any main focus I should shift?
Well, I hope to learn a bit more about how you started growing a startup, and then how it was to scale Enpal.
Yes, perfect. We'll definitely look into that. Any other specific things you'd like to focus? Otherwise, if there's something coming up, we'll have the Q&A section later on and can look into it. So personal background, I think I'll keep it pretty brief. I studied for my bachelor's at WHU, did an exchange semester at UW in Seattle. During the time at uni, I think I focused studying at place 3, and the first 2 things I did was doing own projects, looking into things with people from uni. Second was to table soccer, so kick-on. And thirdly, there was actually the studying. So I did a lot of projects, especially Best of Jodel and an internship at Facebook, which helped a lot, and founded Business Meets Tech. And I'm super happy also that we could co-host this event with WHU and also Business Meets Tech. Because it was pretty clear at this time that there was a need to connect business and tech, and I feel like there are not enough bridges and not enough events bring both sides together. But if you do, as you can see in huge companies like Amazon, Google, there will be so much added value for all participants. So I feel like it's still a topic, and super happy that we could actually co-host it today. And then, the last 3.5 years, I've been with Enpal as a CMO. So we'll look into that later. So just as a brief background, like what I did and what I will talk about. So Best of Jodel actually started when we were in our first exam period, and we were kind of super stressed out by the exams. So we said like, oh yeah, let's have a break. And a friend of mine showed me like some funny joke on Facebook. And then I was asking like, oh, what's that? And he said like, oh, it's Jodel. It's like a local app where people can post. And like really quickly, the idea of posting screenshots of those funny things like arose. It was actually not the first time that we looked into doing an entertainment page on Facebook. I tried it beforehand, but the topic didn't work. So the first learning was to be persistent and to actually keep trying. And soon we saw, after just a couple of weeks, that it grew exponentially, and it had like 1,000 followers at this time. And then I was asking a friend to join as a co-founder, Kevin, and then we grew it to one of the biggest Facebook pages at that time. It was the fastest growing Facebook page in 2016. We had 500,000 followers, so 500,000 people actually liking this page. Like a lot of my friends actually didn't know that I had this page, but liked it and commented. So it was a kind of funny time at uni, and reached over 20 million people on a weekly base, and had a total impression of 3.4 billion over the lifetime of the page. So there were a lot of learnings. I'd say it was like a successful project, as the product was actually adopted by a lot of people, but there were also problems. So I want to talk about both the learnings and also the challenges which arose during this time. We started off with Facebook and then also moved to Instagram and our own webpage, but it was kind of later on. And we also kind of missed the timing for Instagram, as other pages also have been there. So that's just the brief background about Best of Jodel. The first learning, so what did we learn from growing Best of Jodel? The first learning actually was that a great product which engages people in a way which actually creates value or emotion is the perfect way for organic growth. So we spent, I think it was 10 or 20 bucks for marketing the Facebook ads in the beginning. But then grew organically to this massive amount of 3.4 billion impressions. And that really showed me like how important product or digital products are in our today's world. But also the second learning that was a challenge was that we grew this huge product, and I read about online entertainment networks and how successful they were. And that just recently someone sold one for a huge amount of money. But then I realized, if you don't have a business model, you'll not generate any revenue. So we had this huge Facebook page, but weren't really able to generate any profits. Made some attempts at this time, made a lot of learnings, but this was actually the first challenge, and also the reason why we did not pursue it for a longer time, but then sold the asset. Second learning was that team is everything. So having a co-founder is probably one of the most important things, as there are a lot of decisions, a lot of effort, a lot of just emotional struggle you'll go through, doubting whether it works, whether it not works, like having different perspectives. So having a great co-founder is probably one of the most important things if you start off like a project or a company. Except if you're like Jeff Bezos and have like already plenty of experience, then you probably can also go as a solo founder. But coming straight from uni, I think that's super important. Also having the best team, but having the best co-founder as well. What I learned from Best of Jodel was also that you need to be persistent, as beforehand, I think it was like 2013, before Best of Jodel, I tried a Facebook page as well, because I read you can get super rich with like Facebook pages. And we tried Best of Tinder, but actually the time was way beforehand. So we're like not enough content. And also the people didn't even know what it was. So adoption rate was not as good and didn't work out as Best of Jodel. But being bold and also being persistent was one of the main learnings to actually not give up if the first resistance comes, or if there's the first struggle, because if you found your own company, or if you're going into entrepreneurship, there will always be a lot of struggle. So being persistent here is key. And also timing, so we talked about it. Timing, we also talked about it with Frank, like how the solar industry in Germany had 2 waves, and timing is just so important, and you can't really influence whether your timing is right. You can evaluate whether the product is before the right timing, so too early or too late. But it's, I think, one of the most complicated things if you start a company. Because if you have an idea of starting a company, you can't really say like, oh yeah, I should have founded this like 1 year ago. Or like, yeah, I'll found this in 5 years and do whatever in between. So being on time is actually one of the most important things if you found your company, but also, the hardest to influence. But always watch out for whether the timing is right for your product. Early user tests. I think I even saw it here at the HPI building as a sentence in learning. User tests and doing them early is so important, because you can actually know whether your product hits the spot and has the right timing. So, for example, our previous page, I think now I shuttered it off. Or I think the HTML. Yes. Die Bildschirmfreigabe wurde angehalten. Okay, so timing is important, and then user testing. I think going out to people and asking them both for qualitative feedback and also using numbers to evaluate whether your product or business idea could make sense is one of the most important things. because you'll like notice early on whether it makes sense. For example, for Best of Dinner, we noticed like we don't have any content. This will like not grow because content is key. And for Best of Jodel, I think we had like 10 posts a day. And that was really the difference. Actually, like once we had 100 posts a day because we built up a backlog and then noticed that some posts were getting old and posted them all at one day as an experience. And the whole Facebook German pages we have flooded with Best of Jodel posts. But yeah, user testing is actually one of the most important things. We'll talk later about testing specifically. Oh, thanks so much. And can go to the next slide as well. Okay, alles klar. Last learning from Best of Jodel is make yourself redundant and actually try to automate or hire someone for the operative work. So, I mean, firstly, you should do it yourself because just automating every task you have before you is not going to work. It takes a lot of time to automate or to hire a person. But yeah, once you actually do it for a longer time, so you know this task is going to be needed for a longer time, you know how this task works, then you should definitely find a way to make yourself redundant from the operative work. And okay, it works now. Perfect. I think it doesn't work, but we can do it with the arrow keys. Yeah, so I think now we're fully back in, right? Yes. Was it actually a button here? Was it a button here? Or? I don't know. Okay. Same in our company. It actually happens a lot of time that combining digital and offline, where oh yeah, so you're sharing this this presentation, and I'm doing the voice, and you're doing the video, so everyone can see us. So it's, I think someone should fix that. Yeah, the only time I saw it working like a hybrid of digital and offline was at Facebook because they had a whole system called Blue Jeans and it was working really smoothly. But except that, like there was always a struggle to connect everything. So nothing new here. Yes, schalten. 1, 2. Perfect. Okay, so we're fully back in. Shout out to the online people who are hopefully seeing the presentation again. Yeah, okay, so last learning was that, yeah, make yourself redundant once the time has come, because otherwise you'll get stuck in this operative work and you can't work on your company and then will not innovate for new business ways and products, which is also finally why we did not make Best of Jodel profitable. I mean, it did not have any cost base, but also no revenue, because we did not work on concepts on how to monetize, because we always were searching for the best post. And that was yeah, the most complicated thing about, one of the major learnings about Best of Jodel. So after I learned that, yeah, I probably still have to work after college because the first Facebook page did not work out in a profitable sense, I asked myself, what do I want to do next? Actually planned like a year with internships at Facebook, Amazon, and wanted to do some different companies as well, like Google and consulting. But then at just the right time, met Mario, the founder of Enpal, and asked myself, okay, do I really want to do a gap year and then found myself, or do I want to join a founder who has a lot of experience from his previous startup? And I, for myself, decided that it probably is helpful to learn how a startup can be built profitable beforehand and then found later eventually in the future, which was also, for me personally, one of the best things I could have done to not found myself after college. I mean, I don't know how it would have worked, but just having this guided learning and experience you can get from an experienced team, founder, or mentor is really important. That was the reason why I said, ooh, like not founding, but actually working in a startup as like an entrepreneur is a really cool solution for me. So that was like why I decided for Enpal, or to join an experienced founder. So why Enpal specifically? So Mario was like in a presentation in front of like 20 students actually at a WHU speech, and then told us some numbers that the global CO2 emission already has rose by 90%, so almost double compared to 50 years ago. The average temperature is already 1 degree up since 1990. And also that, and it was like actually the thing that convinced me that it could work out of a business perspective, is that solar is becoming cheaper and cheaper over the last years, or the last 10 and 20 years, which also why we had the first wave of solar, which was heavily subsidized, and then the second wave of solar, where you could actually, with less subsidization, make solar profitable. So solar, or specifically PV, is already profitable compared to coal and nuclear, depending on how you calculate the long-term costs, but is already a profitable approach to actually solve our climate crisis. And that is also like what sometimes makes me mad if politicians say like, oh yeah, we have to see how much the climate, like preventing climate change is costing us, and we all have to give something up. Because actually, you can already, with PV systems, like save money and save the environment. So I think, yeah, that is like at that time also what I realized, that we're like before a huge wave of adoption, but no one is actually, yeah, no one is wrong, but like not too many people are realizing that we're on the edge of a new technology for mass adoption. So after the speech, I was really impressed that we're already that far with people. We couldn't really believe it. And one of the major learnings Mario told in his speech was, don't hire the wrong people, so rather hire no one for a position than the wrong person. And then he gave an example that there was no CMO or no head of HR at that point. So I was like, oh yeah, I did something with marketing. Why not write him an email? So I wrote him an email 10 minutes after the speech. Oh, here's my CV, let's talk. And that is how I ended up like actually joining Enpal. It was like 20 people when I got to know it. And yeah, over the years, a lot of things yeah, developed. So what is Enpal's vision? Enpal's vision is yeah, to build the world's biggest renewable energy platform, meaning that we want to connect the energy source, so PV as a renewable energy source, with other things like the mobility sector, so electric vehicles, and a smart grid and smart charging grid, where everyone can charge from a community, and also where you can charge when the electricity prices are the cheapest. So building this energy platform is a huge task. We started with PV, now expanded. Yeah, that'll come later. But start with PV and want to be the largest energy platform. So our vision is to actually power 10 million homes by 2030. So in approximately 9 years with our renewable energy network, which is a huge vision, but that's also learning you have to set your goals really, really big because it makes it easier to achieve great things. So yeah, for Enpal, I want to talk about the first 3 years, and also about learnings about growing a bigger organization compared to Best of Jodel, where it was like just like rather getting warm with startup and entrepreneurship. This will be more about how to scale a big company and learnings and problems which will arise if you yeah, actually grow a company of this size. So the first year was 20 people beginning of 2018. At the end of 2019, it was 120 employees, so already 6 times as many employees, which I thought at the time was a huge growth, which it also was, and it feels really, really steep, and a lot of things are going on if you, sixfold your amount of employees. The total installed PV solutions when I got to know Enpal was around 30 to 40 installations early 2018. So it was like getting the first experience, but not as big as it is today. And by the end of 2019, it was already 1,600 installed PV solutions. Then, we pivoted our buying product to our renting product when I joined Enpal, so late 2018, and we actually realized that if you buy a solar panel solar solution, it often produces like a lot of costs up front. You don't have transparency about how long it actually will keep its value or will work. So it's really complicated, and you make a big investment decision. And because Germans are rather conservative, a lot of people say like, oh yeah, investing 15,000, 25,000 euros in a PV installation is a bit too much, so I'll not do it at all, even though it would have been profitable for most people after 10 or 15 years. So the renting solution has the approach that you do not invest anything up front. You pay a fixed monthly value over the next 20 years, and everything is included. So if anything breaks or if the installation is complicated, you're actually all of it inclusive, and you don't have to take care of it. So we call it a Rundum-Sorglos-Paket. And it was a huge switch for us because it made PV more accessible for everyone, meaning that PV beforehand, could have only been purchased by people who actually have this 15 or 25,000 K, or who have to take a credit. And most people say like, oh, taking a credit in addition to the housing credit is just too much, I'll not do it at all. And that was a game changer. So the renting product was one of the first milestones in Enpal's growth and pivots. And also in the beginning, we were only active in Berlin and Brandenburg to test how the PV installations work. And then we expanded nationwide by the end of 2019 approximately. So that was the first year of Enpal. From an Enpal perspective, for marketing, we did our own first marketing beforehand. We bought contacts from Mario's former company. And then when I joined, I tried out Facebook marketing, as there was a lot of experience, and display ads. They were the first two channels for us. We started A/B testing, as user testing is super important. We'll come back to that later as well. And hired our first marketing employee, Carolina, which is still with us after 1 year, and started to build the marketing team, which was also a journey like hiring, which I'll come back to later as a main learning. So that was like when we already been 4 times as many people. So it wasn't 20, but actually 80 people at the summer party 2019. And we did like a little demo, demo through Berlin, and had a lot of shields for solar energy, and turning our planet more green. Then the second year at Enpal, what happened? We grew from 120 people to 600 employees. The total installations of PV rose from 1,600 to 6,000. And we started our own craftsman subsidiary, which grew in the first year from 0 to 200 craftsmen. So integrated vertically, took more value of the value chain as we did our own installations, also in addition to partners. And then we also integrated vertically by buying our panels and our technique directly in Shenzhen in China, where we have a subsidiary, Hong Kong Limited, who is buying them from the first tier supplier. It's actually pretty cool because they're doing solar for solar. So they're producing these solar panels, which takes a lot of energy by using the energy of old solar panels, which makes the process even more carbon neutral. For the marketing growth, We started doing search advertising or SEO. We did YouTube videos and partner marketing. And then we also used marketing to fill open positions in different other jobs where we needed more employees. So where we grew steeply, you need to hire a lot of people. So we built a funnel with our marketing excellence to actually make this growth possible. And we grew from 2 people on our marketing team to 4 people. Our marketing team was always small compared to the whole company, as our main mantra was to only hire the best and to rather hire no one than to actually hire the wrong person. And 2021, a lot of stuff happened. So last year, we grew to 1,200 employees. Our total installations rose to 13,000. We launched the Enpal battery solution and our own green energy tariff. So we actually have a bundle where you not only get a PV system, but also a battery and your own green energy tariff. So you're completely CO2 neutral for your energy. And we just, in this autumn, reached unicorn status, meaning that with a SoftBank financing round, Enpal actually became the first green unicorn in Germany, which is way too late. And Enpal won the multiple awards, including the Deutsche Nachhaltigkeitspreis NIA, Deloitte's Fast 50, and was voted Green Impact Startup of 2021 in Nature and Tech. So a lot of stuff happened. Here you also see the growth of the installations and the marketing growth. Was mainly about starting our own TV advertising. We started in-funnel marketing and a referral program. So went a lot for more organic leads where you pay less, but have more high qualified leads. We also changed this direction for our digital process. So we're further qualifying the leads online, so we can see whether the customer actually is suitable for an Enpal solution as they upload pictures and then get a reminder which picture is missing and build it, this as a digital product in 2021. And also now we're 10 people in the marketing team, so mainly have mix out of marketing and business development, and then cross-functional positions, meaning data, tech, and BI. Data, meaning BI, tech, and design. So that were the 3 years of Enpal. We can look into the first TV spot to get a little impression of what the work actually was. Do we have sound? We can try to... No, we don't have sound, right? Okay, let's see. I mean, we don't have sound, we can just skip it. But I mean, if anyone is interested, you can also see it on YouTube. So we sourced the Enpal family, who wanted to do the TV spot with us. Main learnings here were to keep it really short, to book the right spots, and to have a clear AIDA structure, so having an attention getter, which is with the dad and his daughter, then having interest and desire, so stating the Enpal solution, and in the end, you have a call to action. So where to figure out more and find more information. So what did I learn in those 3 years? So the multiple learnings, which I considered important if you grow that quickly to a huge company. So coming back to testing, testing not only with the user, but also testing digital products and digital processes is super important. I'm not sure who of you knows the Homer Simpson's car. Hands up. No one knows the Homer Simpson's car. Okay, who watches The Simpsons? I mean, is that still a thing? Okay, so, or like formerly watched. Don't want to judge. So the Homer Simpson's car was a story about when Homer saw that he had a rich cousin, visited him, and then actually made a suggestion to change one thing at the car. And yeah, his cousin was super surprised that it worked really well. And then he said, "Oh yeah, Homer, you're like such an average American. You need to build our next car." And that is what Homer did. It's the car at the right side. And yeah, in the end, it failed completely. Why did it fail? Because it was way over the top, costed too much, and had a lot of unnecessary features which no one wanted to buy. So I think it's a great example of yeah, how to not build products, and a lot of stuff to learn here. So yeah, what is important if you, or why is it important to test digital products? It is in the end way cheaper to do tests and take a bit more of time in the testing process compared to not testing, because if you not test, you'll have a lot of those components which will not create any value, but will cost a lot of money. And in the end, as you see in the Homer Simpson example, no one will buy the car. It's also good to validate which features are creating value and to determine which, like how much value they're actually creating, which also then can shift focus. So if, for example, we noticed that not all things were bad Homer did, but like a bigger cup holder was actually super important and everyone wanted to have that, you could say like, oh yeah, that's an important feature. Let's look into what sizes you have, like how it has to be specifically, because apparently that is super important here. Whereby if you have, for example, yeah, a horn where you can do a speech while you drive through the car is not as important, you can deprioritize it and also cut the costs in the end. In bigger organizations, it's also important that once you have a lot of costs for a feature or product, that you justify yeah, the cost of the product, and that it's actually creating value. So by determining the value, you can also justify costs. So testing is not only about a yes or no, do we want that feature or not, but also on how to, like how much money you want to spend on it, how much focus and effort. In the end, it also creates user value, because if you focus on the important features of a car, then yeah, you can also yeah, improve the quality. And also one of the things you'll see in bigger corporations, but also smaller corporations, is wishful thinking. Who of you knows the concept of wishful thinking? Okay, a couple of people. So Elon loves to talk about wishful thinking. So what is wishful thinking? It's expecting a reality to come which is not as realistic. So ignoring downsides, ignoring challenges, but to just assume the best case scenario and to assume that it will happen. So if you have a big project over, for example, 1 year, and you have wishful thinking, it in the end will take longer because you did not check how much time like different challenges will take, and wishful thinking will create a lot of deficits in your company. So testing can actually prevent wishful thinking, because you know what's important, you can focus it, and yeah, don't do the wrong things, thereby save time, and also validate your idea before you actually work on it. So for example, work on a huge project, and after 1 year notice that my thesis in the beginning was completely wrong, then I lost 1 year. If I tested in a lean setup, I probably take 1 year, 1 week, and way less resources to figure out that this will not work. So that is the learning of yeah, the Homer Simpson's car. And actually, the Homer Simpson's car was portrayed as really, really bad. But if you look at it with like big cup holders and a huge window, it is not as bad as you might think, because, for example, the Tesla goes in the direction of having more window space and having more to look, as Homer would say. So testing could have actually helped this car having the good features without having the bad features. Yeah, second main key is hiring AAA players for your team. So this is really, really, really important, as in the end you have 3 things. It's people, product, and profits in this order. So without having a great team, you will never be able to scale your product. I mean, your product also has to be, return some kind of profit, as we learned in the case of Best of Jodel, but also having a really, really great team saves you a lot of challenges and brings you forward so much in the end. That is also why we, with 1,200 people, can do the whole marketing with 10 people, because I trust all of them completely, and they're one of the best peers to have. So how do I get this AAA players? I mean, if they're so important, we have to ask ourselves the question on where we can actually get those AAA players, what they want in a job, and also how you can look for them systematically. So where to look is both personal network and active outreach. Personal network means all people you know, or people you know and who they know, so friends of friends. In the book Who, A Method for Hiring, it was actually described to ask everyone you know, every great person you know, who are the best 10 people you can recommend me to hire. Because there's one similarity: great people know great people, or successful people know successful people. So if you ask people you would hire but they're not available, what other people they know, to get yourself 10 suggestions, you'll end up in a network of getting to know more people. And this is one approach of hiring AAA players. The other one is active outreach, for example, via LinkedIn or other formats where you have a lot of information about the people, where you can look at the CV up front, or for example at events where you already know your target audience. So those two are the most successful in hiring AAA players. You can also do push marketing, but it's rather for high volume hires, and it'll get you a huge quantity. Also, inbound applications can be good. I mean, everyone can apply to your website, but it's just way more people applying inbound versus selecting who you want to speak up front. So the key question is, what kind of profile can be most successful in this job? Meaning to imagine what the job actually takes as requirements, which people you know who could actually fit this job, even though you maybe don't want to hire them or can't hire them. It's a great exercise to actually know who would be successful, because it's both good for them to be successful. If they're not successful, they're not like it neither. And obviously for your team or for your business or company, as you need successful people in their jobs and positions. So if you ask who's successful, you need to break it down into a competence matrix, meaning that you want to have hard skills and character traits both broken down. I did an example for our marketing business development position where I think we worked 2 years on how to structure the information, how to structure the job, and what is important if you want to be successful as a growth development manager at Enpal. So we figured out the hard skills. So what marketing is about is both creative and communicative expertise, meaning it's like the classical marketing skills you probably know. So being good in communication and creative thing is maybe something you find at a creative agency, but also analytical and technical skills and structure and project management. Analytical and technical skills sometimes go hand in hand, but most often they're contraries of creative and communication skills. So what we looked for is people who have at least 3 of the 4, so creative, communication, analytic, and technical skills, to ensure that the team stays holistic and doesn't build silos, meaning that there's one technical expert, one creative expert, and then there's a lot of communication between those people. So we try to have a holistic hard skill setup where everyone can, where everyone can be successful for different tasks. For soft skills, we looked at who is successful in a marketing position at a startup and why. So we figured out that there are yeah, some things which always, which they have in common. So it's cultural fit, they fit in the team, they fit in the company, they take end-to-end ownership, meaning that they are fully responsible and take responsibility over tasks, projects, and they're in the end performance-oriented. So they want to succeed in their job. They're open to input and feedback. So you might know the ocean model in psychology. It's the O in ocean, the openness, which is super important, because if you don't have feedback, if you're not reflected, you'll not navigate in a dynamic structure as in a startup. They're also proactive. They have own ideas and speak about them. They have a strong business sense and are resourcefulness. What means resourcefulness? They do less with more. So they can, for example, like in a big corporate, you probably have a lot of resources and need to ensure with the highest probability that something succeeds. In a startup, it's often the other way around, that you have little resources and try to work with what you have. So that is like hard skills and soft skills is actually also close to a smart creative, what Google describes as their target profile, combining data-drivenness with creative, so smart approaches and creative approaches, all with those soft and hard skills. Yeah, what are common denominators in AAA players? Where can you find those hard skills and soft skills? You need to look for commonalities in universities, internship, workplaces, interests. For example, we figured out that people who are successful in the market and business position often also think about founding an own company, as this hugely correlates with all the soft skills here, like end-to-end ownership. Now we're going backwards. Yeah, the motivation of those AAA players is super important to know. So what motivates those people so you can actually create an environment where they're happy, but also communicate that during the hiring process. So for example, with smart creatives, how Google frames it, it's gaining learnings and experience, having responsibility and autonomy, and work with like-minded peers, all above a good salary. So compared to traditional fields, good salaries often comes way higher as a priority. With smart creatives and young talents is often less prioritized. I mean, it's still important, and it's super important to also value in a salary what like employees create as value. But it wouldn't be the right approach to only talk about benefits and salary for those people, but actually rather to target how they can learn, how they can gain responsibility, experience, and also that they can be fully responsible and autonomous in their projects. Which also had the great advantage that if they're fully autonomous and responsible, that you have less work with like managing tasks, because they'll do it themselves. So that is really, really important for this kind of profile. And the last 3 points, what is important is to have real work or real life assignments. So to actually use cases as validator in the hiring process. I think it's pretty common for tech positions to test their technical knowledge. Cases are also important to test the motivation of people. So to actually see how they prepare beforehand, what they do in the task, and how they approach it. So we figured out that cases not on spot, but with upfront preparation work best to test motivation, but also to challenge them in real work environment, because you can imagine that knowing for example, knowing lines of code at heart is maybe helpful, but in the real world, you can pretty much Google everything, can go to Stack Overflow, and see how the code works out specifically. So the real, challenging the real skills in the case is most important. So not like grades or knowing stuff at heart, but actually how they approach a more complex problem. One before lastly is to have a clear hiring funnel. So to actually know how you hire, what the structure is. So it makes it easier if a candidate comes in to know what to schedule next, and how you pursue. So we, for example, have an HR call, a hiring manager call, that is me in the case, then a case presentation, and then peer interviews with other people from the team and outside the team to challenge from all perspectives. Then be fast. Hiring takes a lot of practice, and you'll probably not get it right in the beginning. But one of the main advantages you have compared to bigger organizations and bigger startups, bigger companies, is that you can be really, really fast if you're a lean company, have a less complicated setups, because a huge company has to speak back to validate a budget for an open position, to reopen a position. But as a startup, you can actually also always use that as a competitive edge to move fast and hire someone faster than competitors. Because good people or great people have one thing in common. They're always shortly in the market, and then if they look for jobs, they'll most likely really, really quickly get a job. And being fast is maybe one of the main things you can do without any work, but it'll help you a lot. Actually, the second hire we did for the marketing team, Alina was in the hiring process for less than 1 week with all the steps above, because she mentioned in the first interview that she has an outstanding decision until end of the week. And we said, okay, and then we can just put all the calls in this week and we'll get it done. It's just a lot of work for both sides, but if you really want to hire a person, speed can really help you here. And lastly, invest a lot of time in hiring. So most people underestimate how much time you need to invest in hiring. And as it's super exhaustive, as you speak with a lot of people just do less hiring, which is probably one of the main downfalls, because you can just grow as big as your team is. So if you do not invest a lot of times 10 or 20% of your time into hiring, you'll in the end not do enough and grow not as fast as you could. So just investing more time in hiring, even if you're thinking, I'm already investing a lot of time, just invest more. It will always be helpful. And there's one thing you can't have enough, it's good AAA players and a lot of experience in hiring. So that is maybe like be fast, invest a lot of time in hiring, are probably the main takeaways on a high level here. So for example, Enpal on the top management side has a lot of great hires. So I'll not get into all of the people in depth, but Mario actually taught me a lot about hiring and did a great job. Probably building one of the best teams for a startup in the unicorn status I know from the recent years. And it's also one of the things everyone says within Enpal, that, I mean, the product is cool, it's something renewable, you do something great for the environment, everything else is cool, but in the end, it's mainly about the people. And that is why hiring also is super important, because great people love to work with great people. And just to round it up, it's probably one of the best teams I know in Enpal in Berlin, and just the result of a lot of hard work. I don't want to know like how many hours Mario invested to gather all of us, but it was probably thousands of hours to, in the end, build a great team. We can actually skip that, because otherwise I think we run out of time. So the main takeaway here is that in the end, big projects are super important for a large organization, and is mainly what drove the success of companies like Amazon and Google to start a lot of big projects like AWS or Android for Google, Google Maps, Gmail, and all the other new products and projects. But also once your company or organization is growing really big, it becomes more challenging because you have a lot of direct connections, and just starting with 2 or 5 people is way easier managing projects compared to if you have a big company and there are a lot of existing processes and business. So one key takeaway is this kind of scorecard where you just clearly state the impact. So what is the value you expect to create? What is the certainty and validation? So how certain are you that this is creating value? Then complexity, cost in money, workforce, and lost opportunities. So how much money is it going to cost? How much, for example, developers do we need for this task? How much BizDev capacity? And also what do we have to give up to do this project and not anything else, so the opportunity costs. Then you need to be careful about the dependency to other project resources and teams. One of the main learnings for the MVP is to really ensure that it's minimal and viable. I've seen it so many times that an MVP is rather an MP or a VP, but not actually an MVP. So you'll have a minimal product, which is just like a really, really small product of the main version, but is not viable. Or you have a viable product, but it's bloated and takes a lot of time because it's not minimal. So ensuring both minimal and viable in the MVP is super important. There's a best practice to do it in 90 days or less. I would always list the risk and fuck-up potential for new projects. You have to align with all stakeholders being involved. And one of the main takeaways also when Enpal grew quickly, mainly from the last year, is to decouple the main organization and the team who's doing the project. So other people call it Speedboat, or Amazon create the 2 pizza team, meaning the team has to be fed by 2 pizzas. And it actually really helps to set up independent speedboats and not to do bigger projects from within, because independent teams can independently do an MVP and test everything around it and then reintegrate in the huge org. But if you try to do the product within the huge org, it'll take a longer time. It has huge risk if anything fails, or it influences the whole organization, and can also be changed rather quickly compared to when you have this huge organization and then change everything, iterate. It just takes way more time. So speedboats or the 2 pizza team is maybe one of the main takeaways from the last year regarding bigger projects. We can actually skip that one because otherwise we're going over time. So 12 learnings for young founders is the last slide. So what I learned is that speed matters and is super important to just be even faster, even bolder than you already think you are. Especially people with like a more rational mind, or engineers are often perfectionizing projects, but are never getting it done. So done is better than perfect. And you have to move fast, how Facebook frames it. If you imagine a world where you do everything twice as fast, in the end, you'll grow quicker. You will also secure a more positive cash flow, and it'll make you more innovative as you just are closer to the market adoption. We talked about people, product, and profits. So it's always important to focus to have the right people, and also that the right people are happy in the team setting. You have to focus the product, and you have to focus the profit. If you have a great co-founder and a great product, but no profit, you have the case of best of Jodel, and you'll just not make it like a professional business out of it. If you have the case of having a great product and a great profit, that's cool, but it probably doesn't scale if you don't have the right people. And if you have profit and people, but not a product, it'll probably go in the innovation gap, meaning that you'll have a short-term profit, but it'll not innovate the next product for your future profits. Good is the enemy of great, especially for hiring, but also for important tasks. It's really, really important to not hire good people, but to hire great people. because in the end, it'll just multiply and is a huge difference in the end. If you have like 10 factors and everyone is 10% better, you'll in the end have a way bigger impact than if you have 10 factors and everything is 10% less is good. Focus on impact and measure it brings together two principles from Facebook and Amazon. So focus and impact means to clearly shift the focus to what creates impact, meaning that you can do a lot of tasks, but if they're not impactful in the end, you'll not create any value for your startup. Measure it is most important as it prevents wishful thinking. If you just think it has impact but don't measure it, you'll not move any further there. The power of 10x goals. So sometimes there's an effect of the 10x rule where it's sometimes easier to look at a task and actually do 10x of the goal you wanted to commit. Because if you have a 10x goal, for example, if I don't want to found a unicorn but a decacorn, you just take different approaches and think differently. So it really helps to have this rule of 10. So if you're sometimes stuck with a goal and you think it's too complicated, just multiply it by 10 and you'll find ways how to differently approach it. So this is, it's super not counterintuitive, but it'll often help you actually go over your goal when it's too hard. The art of copying well. So there is a tendency of doing everything yourself, but actually if you have a startup, you have so many problems and so many challenges that you can't do everything yourself. So copying well means actually looking at the industry, looking at like other companies out of industry and seeing what they're doing well and then do a best of all worlds. For example, if you want to renew your website, you should probably look at a lot of different websites and then pick what you like and just combine those to your website and not do everything yourself. I mean, I did both. Like with my cousin, I had like a Jodel website where you could design them, and we like just programmed it in 1 week. But we started with doing everything ourselves and noticed that it's super hard if you like do the user management yourself. And in the end, just hackily worked on a WordPress page, and it was way easier to start because it already had stuff like user management integrated. No wishful thinking, we talked about that one, I think. Be open, gather as much feedback as you can. It goes a bit in the direction of copying well. So if you, again, try to solve every problem yourself, you'll eventually always get stuck because it's just too much to think about, too much to handle. And one of the best advice and one of the main similarities I see in great founders is that they have a lot of, like a huge sounding board, meaning a lot of people, mentors, or like-minded peers who also founded, who then talk about their experience and about what challenges they had which were similar. So having feedback and input, especially if you're not as experienced, will help you a lot. So, I mean, myself coming into Enpal and being, I think, one of the least experienced C-level in one of the unicorn startups, also heavily relies on getting a lot of feedback and asking for feedback. Because if you don't ask for feedback, if you don't ask for input, if you don't look for both of them, you just take way longer in the learning process to actually figuring stuff out. And feedback and input can be an accelerator for your learning and that therefore also the learning and the growth of your company. Yeah, the testing mindset, I think we talked about in the Homer Simpson's car. Just do a lot of those tests. Try a lot of stuff and keeps what works, as a saying. So you want to test a lot of things like a huge windshield for your car, seeing whether it works, or a cup holder, and then just validate whether this is something the people like. Because in the end, you can't foresee all features and how they interact with each other and the user. So just trying a lot of things and keeping what works is one of the best strategies probably. do more gut decisions. It was actually one of the main learnings or the best advice I got during the Facebook internship. I asked Robert, who was a manager at Facebook at the time, what is the best decision you can give me for my future career joining Enpal? And he said something I didn't understand at this time, but just do more gut decisions. Why is that so important? Because gut decisions can often, or your gut can often process more information and make more complex decisions because it mainly relies on experience and previous situations, where your rational mind is way less complex and can't combine all those experience. And either way, you can mostly rationalize both perspectives, so yes or no for a certain topic. For gut decisions, for example, in hiring, it works really, really well to listen to what your gut says and to further validate that with a rational mind, but to not only rely on your rational mind because it'll have a limit on complex information. And also, gut decisions are not as complicated because they're instinctive and you can just do more with being less stressed out. So making more gut decisions and having a natural flow of decisions is really, probably one of the best advice I got at that time compared to relying only on rational arguments. Just-in-time delivery. For startups, but I also work in a university, or at least in my experience in university, often tasks will get more clear or sometimes will not be important at all if we do them closer to the deadline. So preparing everything is maybe possible in university, but there is some point in life where it's just not possible anymore. So doing everything just in time, I mean, as Toyota does it as a whole infrastructure about building a car, is actually making things more focused. You have them when they're important, you have all information available, and also you do less stuff which becomes unnecessary in the end. And especially bigger companies like Enpal is one now, have a lot of stuff which might be going on, but in the end is not as important as it seems in the moment. So doing things as late as possible, but also just in time, is probably one of the things I think is best for task and to save work. And lastly, the power of and. So often in life you'll hear an or, meaning that you want to do this or that. For example, I said I want to have the security of a well-paid job, but also want to found a company, and said, oh, that's actually not possible because you have to decide either you're going to be in this high-risk environment and found your own company, or you go into like a traditional field and make a decent income, but it'll be fixed and you'll have not as steep of a learning curve. And here the power of and was to look for something who had both things. So often we say this is like a medal has two sides, but in most of the cases you can actually, and please think about that, but most of the cases you can take both sides and combine them in some way and some solution. So the power of and is also a super useful technique to looking for solutions which have both advantages and no disadvantages. So that were like the 12 learnings I picked from what I found most important for young founders. And there was the last part of the presentation. So yeah, thank you all for your attention, and I hope you could get something out of it, pick a bit of the experience I did in the last 6 years at Enpal, at Best of Jodel, and I think now we have time for Q&A. Perfect.
Right. Mic's on. Seems like it. First of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Daniel. I'm the founder of the HPI Entrepreneur Club, and we organized this event here today. And I asked Frank to join, and it's a pleasure to listen to your story, and very, very insightful. And yeah, also a lot of clapping from the chat here. So thanks from you. So
Thanks so much.
why do I have the laptop here? I'm also going to monitor the chat. And so when the Q&A starts now, you can also post your question in the chat and I will repeat it. And also for the questions here in the room, I will repeat them here just for better recording quality. And with that, yeah, let the Q&A start, I would say.
Super cool. Yes.
I have the first question. So we talked a lot about HR and we spoke about the importance of HR and then I think you also spent a lot of time thinking about it, scale from 200 people to in 3 years. And I'd like to know a bit more about the structure. So what is the main occupation of most of these people? You talked about that you had 2 subsidiaries, the one that's purchasing and the other one that does the craftsmanship, I think.
Yes, correct.
And so I'm wondering if you're only, if you've gone from 2 to 4 to now 10 people in the marketing department, from over 1,000 people working at the company, how many people actually cognitive heavy stuff and how many of them are maybe
Is that focused on marketing team only?
I think the whole company, right?
Okay. About how is the occupation distribution within Enpal?
Okay, yeah, so the question was, how is the occupation distribution among Enpal? What are the people actually doing? Yeah.
Okay, we're repeating the question for the people online on the recording. Okay, nice. Great question. So actually, like knowing your org structure, so in a bigger org, who is working for whom and how it's divided into departments is super important. Like you have multiple approaches, or traditionally, you have the rule of 7, meaning you can only have 7 direct reports. And this will generate smaller teams, but a smaller, steeper hierarchy. And Google just turn it around and say you have the rule of 7, meaning you have to have at least 7 reports. So this leads to bigger teams, but a less steep hierarchy, so a flat hierarchy. So in Enpal, we actually have multiple approaches because it's a complex org with a lot of different tasks. We can mainly differentiate between high-frequency hires, meaning jobs which need to be done repeatedly because they're working with or at the customer. So that is sales, or this is customer service, and customer management, and the craftsman. So those are the most volume-heavy positions. As if you want to scale with the customers, you have to scale as well with people working with them. You can also use technology to make it less steep, the curve, but it'll mainly scale with the organization. And then we have other departments which are more specialized and where it's not as repetitive, mainly finance, marketing, HR, and probably a product as one, tech and development, or the product and tech, and probably some I'm forgetting as well. Purchasing, because you do the agreement once, but if you do it multiple times, you don't do it for every panel, but you have like a set contract. So everything which does not scale with the customer is rather more specialized, so the people will not do the same thing, but rather, for example, in the marketing team, will do a lot of different projects, being completely different in their tasks. So yeah, that is the main structure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Right. Thank you. Next question.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
As a CMO of a company with over 1,000 employees, how does your daily routine look like? Do you have a daily routine? Or
Yeah, great question.
Right. Let me repeat the question first. So the question was about the daily routine. Like, what does your day look like now as a CMO of a unicorn?
Yeah, it's really funny hearing the questions twice, but it's a great question. So actually, daily routines is probably in the end one of the things you can't master enough, because on all levels, daily routines, or like just how you structure your day, is an art which limits in the end your result, because even for Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, the day has 24 hours and they can structure it. But they'll not get more time. So what looks my daily routine or weekly routine is probably the better approach. So I have one-on-ones with each of the employees. So everyone on the team has half an hour to an hour for one-on-one things you just have to go through, whether it's getting advice or feedback for things, approval, or just whatever there is. So there are operative one-on-ones with the team. There is a weekly team meeting. There is a management meeting as a weekly. Then there are feedback sessions depending on how long you're with the company, 1 week as a weekly or monthly or bi-weekly, mostly on Friday, where I talk with my employees one-on-one to get feedback and to give feedback, which is super important, as mentioned. And then there are different weeklies, which are mainly based on topics like product and tech. The coordination between marketing and sales is a weekly. And that's that for the fixed structure of meetings. I mean, one of the most important things is to kill all meetings which are not necessary. And most of the people have way too many meetings in their calendar, which are completely unnecessary, where they just are like where you set up a meeting which made sense originally, but is not needed in a weekly format anymore. So one thing which actually helps is to not do a weekly if you do it the first time, but do it once and then renew it for a couple of times, and then just do a weekly if it really makes sense in the team or organizational structure. I mean, I know I'm always going to talk with my team. I'm always going to talk with sales or product. So that makes sense as weekly. But for all project based or like singular topics, I'd suggest to use one-time slots and to not make weeklies. But otherwise, like not meetings, daily routine-wise, we look a lot at our KPIs, OKRs, and numbers. So getting into the KPIs daily is super important to just see whether everything goes well, whether problems occur, and to be as close and as deep into your organization as possible. And that are, I think, the most things which are based on routine, and then you have always a lot of stuff coming up, which will come on top anyways.
Yeah, thank you. We also have some first questions in the chat.
Oh, yes.
And the first question is kind of twofolded. So it's kind of going into Enpal. And the question is, when you're now renting out, as you explained, solar panels, there's a lot of capital being locked up. So how did you address this problem? And if you're taking up credits, like how did you address, this is like the second part of the question, how did you address the changes in interest as a potential vulnerability to your startup or business?
Yeah, let's answer the first question first. So it's true that financing and renting those solar installations is super capital intensive. That is why we work with a lot of partners. So banks, mainly DKB, ING, and BlackRock, and have over $500 million, so 500 million in fundings for our special purpose vehicles, SPVs, meaning that they're an own subsidiary financing the whole panels for the customers. And then there is there are costs for repairs and other stuff included in this SPVs. And we get the money from the, we give the money back to the bank on a monthly base, but the subsidiary can pay Enpal directly because we need to finance the panels, and the SPV will then take care of the customer for those 20 years. So that is how Enpal finances the structure. So, I mean, in the end, with help from partners, we couldn't like finance that on top ourselves. Not yet. Maybe later with like green bonds, but probably also learning like sometimes you're not as big or it's just too complex to do it yourself in a company or startup. So you need to partner up with other companies like a bank who does that way more often than you do, and therefore more successful and just know best practices. We couldn't like do the whole thing ING or BlackRock are doing. What is the second part of the question?
Yeah, the second part was how do you address the vulnerability of credit changes when it comes to taking credits, or like interest changes when it comes to taking credits?
Interest change, okay, that's a good question. So now I get the question. So the rate we have, it really depends on the SPV and the contract, but is mainly fixed for a long time. And as PV is cheap and interest is really, really low as well, it works that the customer actually has a good price on the renting. So we currently also have interest, which makes it even more profitable and better. I mean, not profitable, but a better product for the customer and for us to work in the current times. Yeah.
Thank you. I would say before we go to the next question in the chat, perhaps one question here in the room again, if there are any.
Yes.
Yeah, I would be interested into like the joining part. I mean, you joined pretty early when it was a small company, but still you weren't there like when the whole development thing happened. How would you say changes that like your personal relationship, let's say, with Enpal, getting there at that point, and perhaps also how do you see it like people joining even later in the management team? How does it change to be there from the beginning? You know, all that.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. So the question was,
yes.
For the audience now, the question was, how does joining the company when there were already 20 employees change your relationship towards the company, as you're not like the first founder of the company? And also perhaps when you join even later, like for you, perhaps start with your experience.
Yes, so it's a really great question because a company growing that fast will change a lot. So I usually say it takes 3 to 6 months to have a completely different company, which has something to do with the company beforehand, but is so different in nature that you have to adopt, overcome, and just do things differently, and everything changes. So it is true that if you grow quickly, things will change quickly as well. So how did it change? I think one of the main things is organizational structure and communications, because if it's a small company, you know everything intuitively and you know everyone intuitively or naturally. If it becomes more like bigger, you need a better org structure to orchestrate the conversation between different departments. So who should speak with whom, or how do you set up a project, for example? That is a thing which is mainly changing the communication and org structure. It helps to know the full history of Enpal, mainly, for example, in IT and development projects where it's just a lot of history. So being there where it was developed often just gives you a better understanding of how a decision should be made, just based on like what you already have and the learnings you already accumulated. So it sometimes seems repetitive to then explain all informations at hand for people who are not as long there. And I think it's definitely also a challenge for upper management to come in such a complex startup environment as Enpal, which has like a lot of functions to actually make, like the financing, marketing, sales, operations, which is maybe like a bit more complex startup than the usual one. And I think also for management, it's sometimes complicated to get into everything. And it's definitely a challenge of later hires compared to sooner hires. For like resolving that, in my team internally, we have a structured onboarding where everyone presents his or her part of their responsibility, and this enables the people to be in Wirkung kommen, to be in effect most quickly. Really having a structured onboarding and giving a good overview of what you work with is the most important thing you can do.
All right. Yeah, thank you. And here's another question in the chat. I like it. It's a personal one. Is there anything you're particularly proud of, looking back at your time at Enpal in general? Perhaps something like a marketing or advertising move you and your team did.
Good question. I think there are probably many things where you just have adopted or overcome a challenge or have a product or feature, But personally, what I'm most proud of is the team I set up, because all of the progress and all of the work we're currently doing as a team, like I couldn't do it myself. Like no way that would have been possible. That is possible. So having this team and yeah, see how they work together is the moment where I'm most proud. Because a product, it's nice and you think you have an achievement, but sustainably proud, yeah, most of it is my team.
Awesome. Yeah, perhaps another question here in the room. Here. Yeah, you.
Yes.
Okay, so how is your decision-making process for like strategic decisions? You showed us all the board members. It's quite a lot of people. What's your role in this, and maybe how did your role change when you were like less employees? And
yeah, great question. So yeah.
Perhaps let me repeat it one more time. The question was, how did his role change now from being in an early stage startup to now also having to coordinate perhaps with a lot of top management? Yeah.
Yeah. So when it was a smaller company, I think the biggest difference is that you know everyone, meaning not only management but also the people directly. I think one of the main changes is that if you have new projects or decisions, you can't solve them decentral. So if in a 1,200 people organization, everyone talks to everyone, then there's no structured information, no structured decision making, so it'll not work. So for projects, I'd always recommend to set them up on the highest level to coordinate. For example, if it's a project regarding marketing, Amazon calls it a 3-pager, where they prepare as a 3-pager in a similar format, and then coordinate on a high level, and then to set it one level lower to see who can take responsibility in each team, but to set it up clearly up front. That is maybe the most important thing. Yeah, how to set up projects with other people on the C-level. But it's also within an organization. If you, for example, don't have a marketing sales project, but a marketing project, I mean, our team is not as people heavy, but if it would be multiple teams, I mean, one team for like offline marketing, one for brand, one for online, then you would also have to set up the project in between those teams first to then set it a level lower. And that is also why I would always keep your organization as small as possible, because it just makes things way easier. There's this this experiment or example where if 3 people in a room cheer each other with a class, it's let's see, 1, 2, 3, three cheers. But if we're like 20 people, it would be 20 plus or 19 plus 18 plus 17 plus 16. So it's like just by adding 17 more people, it gets hugely more complex to have every direct connection. So managing this complexity in org is the main challenge.
Right, perfect. We had at least 2 more questions here.
Maybe from people who did not ask a question yet. Yes.
You
already did, yes. There was a question here.
Yeah, he already did 2, but I think we can repeat.
Thanks.
I already asked one, and I have 2, and they're kind of combined. So I'll start with the first one, and then we negotiate.
Shoot for it,
Yeah, let's do one first.
So the first question is to put this all in a bit more context and to learn a bit more about Enpal and how we could think about it, and based on that, then the right questions. And so the question that I have is, how does Enpal position itself as a platform that utilizes its scale to then make TVs accessible to consumers, private households, and then do they own that as technology, or do they import it themselves and thereby derive some cost benefit? How can I understand Enpal's business model?
Yeah, so the short question was, how can I understand the business model of Enpal? How is Enpal positioning itself in the market?
For the question of whether it's rather a platform or whether it works rather in a linear direction, You see both approaches working in the market. You have American examples of Sunrun and Sunnova. And Sunnova, for example, is rather a platform where they have more installation, but also create less of the value. And what we're currently doing, having both approaches, like a platform and also a rather linear business, because the platform is where we create the Aufträge, the installations, and then both we vertically integrate with our own teams, but also different craftsman companies in the market can fulfill the installation. So that is a platform aspect. The financing solution is currently only for our marketing and sales process itself, but could be a platformized where you then just use the financing of, for example, a green energy bond and use it for multiple directions. You could even platformize marketing and sales, or the craftsman, where you use your own craftsman company to also do different installations to get up to a higher volume. So currently, I'd say Enpal has both aspects of the platform and a vertical business. And it's probably most like when Amazon started was a book platform, but then now they have also Amazon Basics, where they're themselves a party in their own platform business. So Enpal has both aspects as well.
All right. I know you have a second question, but perhaps let's see if there are some other ones.
I have again more personal question to you. After your bachelor, you decided to join Enpal directly. Why didn't you go for a master?
So it was a personal question. Why didn't you go for a master's degree after your bachelor's degree and directly went into the market and joined Enpal?
Yeah, a good question. So I think it really always depends on your personal preferences and what you feel is right, what your gut feels what's right. And when I came out of uni, I really liked what I learned, but I wanted to put it into practice. And just after the bachelor was like, exhausted of studying. It was like doing a master's again, like just straightly afterwards, wouldn't have been the right option for me personally. That is why I said like a gap year is at least what I can do. And then either like if the timing is right, found your own company, or doing a master's if you don't have the right settings or timing, product, team for founding your own company. But then I met Mario and everything changed anyway. So that is when I decided Enpal, didn't want to pursue a master, but Enpal was rather something spontaneously coming up and was just feeling right, even though I did not even think about not founding my own company at that time.
Right. So no more questions also in the chat. And
yes,
we probably have some more questions here, but I think now it's time to wrap it up. We still have some time here afterwards to ask Frank some questions personally here in a small round. But yeah, I say now it's time to wrap this whole online event also up. Thank you all for being here also online with us. Thank you, Frank, for joining us here in the 10th Startup Talk. And thank you for the whole HPI community who's here in person or also online. And also thank you to our friends from WHU to join us here today. And yeah, with that, have a good evening, everyone.
Yeah. So thanks also from my side. I think thanks for your attention and also the questions. I'm super happy to finally have been at HPI once after having already multiple contacts here. I think lastly I can just say if you at any time have a question or if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn or wherever you want to. Or wherever you find me, but you can find me on LinkedIn. And feel free to reach out for questions, advice, or also for hiring at Enpal if you're interested. And thanks so much for your time. And I hope you could all gather something and get something out of the speech and yeah, take away some learnings. Thanks.